All right. I'm back, everybody. Oh, my Lord. We're back on the mics. And I have a friend here with me, and I'm really excited because kind of like a newer friend, which we've gotten connected through, I don't even know, fitness things, life, too many things. So we won't get into all of them. But Blair Blanchette is here. She's also the owner of Be Your Kind, which is an amazing, amazing place. I'm not going to tell you about it because she's going to tell you about it. But we're going to talk women in business and hustling. And honestly, a lot of the things that you had to go through to start a business, and I'm going to chime in because I also started a business, but I think what better way to just introduce yourself, and then we'll do a call sit and we'll get it right into it.
Perfect. Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. I started Be Your Kind back in November. So it's been 6-7 months, which flies by.
Already killing it, by the way.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So really like my background, where I started, just to get right into it. I was a nurse for about 7 years prior. So I worked in labor and delivery, which is a completely different area than where I am now. And kind of I went back to school. So I got my NP, FNP. Minnesota is really great. I really wanted more autonomy with what I was doing, and being a nurse was great, but I just wanted to do something a little bit more. So went back. That gives me the ability to see patients, prescribe, treat. So kind of with that, I was like really thinking, I was like, what do I want to do? I was following a lot of people around within, different medical providers, nurse practitioners, MDs.
Yeah.
And kind of like when I was doing that, I was really noticing, I was like, hey, like I was also going through my own like skincare and just like my own different health journeys. And I was really sick of like traditional, go in, get your prescription. Here's your symptoms. Here's a prescription and you're on your way. And I just felt like I was doing my own research at home too, because I'm like, there's got to be something else. Like, how do I get to the bottom of a lot of these things? And that's really like where Be Your Kind came, was just to give, women and men too, but just other opportunities and alternative therapies to really treat their diseases and symptoms, and then really blending in aesthetics as well too, because I truly believe like prevention and treatment really, aesthetics shouldn't be any different, right? Like you're going in, there's different ways to prevent when you're looking at skin concerns, whether it's, aging or whatever it is. And then there's also a time and place for treatment too. So it's an all-encompassing approach, which has been really fun to build.
You guys are amazing though. You have the holistic mix. You also can go for like aesthetically pleasing things. Like I'm like, what about my Botox? Like what about whatever? Like I like a little Botox in my forehead, and I'm loud and proud with that. 100%. I can say that. I'm not worried about it. Yeah. There's been some interesting revelations about like filler. I actually want your take on it, just because I just thought about it and I'm like, wait a minute, I need to ask you about this.
Yeah, I love it.
What do you think? Like
about filler?
Yeah, I'm just like, I don't know if it's true. Like it sits in your face. Is that true?
There's been studies for sure that it will stay in people's faces for longer, because most companies will say it's 1 year to 2 years and then it's dissolved from their system. To me personally, I feel like it's so hard, because it's like one person, filler, they'd be a really great candidate for filler. And then another person, it's like, you're more of a surgical candidate, or you're way, less severe. And let's really talk about prevention, and you're just not at the point where you need filler. So yeah. It's so hard to say like one versus the other, it's just like, you got to see the person, you got to know what, what they're dealing with. And then a lot of times too, it's just like, okay, what does that person want? Like, do they want to go with a medication approach? Do they want more natural, where they just want to do like radiofrequency, microneedling, things like that? Cause there's so many different people, and what they want is different from person to person. So, but yeah, I would say time and a place for filler. So it's
agreed,
not to give it like a wishy-washy answer, but
it's not. No, don't worry. So you're treating lots of different things. Can you just give some examples of things that you're seeing and treating, and what you do specifically?
Yep. So what I do specifically, I do a lot of skincare, like dermatology, and then weight loss is another big one that I do. And then at our clinic, we do aesthetics. So we have a whole branch of aesthetics, injections, Botox, filler, microneedling, all the things. And then we have women's health too. So we do fertility, PCOS, all those types of things as well. And then naturopathic doctor. So she kind of does more general family med stuff as well.
You do it all.
We do it all.
Because at first, this is pre knowing anything about it. I was like, okay, Blair's opening something. I'm like, oh, it's going to be like a cool, like aesthetics place. And then finding out there's so much more purpose behind it. And just like, it's more than just that, which aesthetic places are amazing too. We've got some in Minneapolis that are amazing, but I'm like, the fact that you do it all and it's like a one-stop shop is really freaking cool. Yeah. And I don't think that exists at all. And that's probably part of the reason why you opened it the way that you did.
Yeah. And that honestly was like, I feel like I was looking, and you can go, there's so many different aesthetic places in Minnesota and Edina where we are. And that's, there's nothing wrong with that. But I just felt like at the end of the day, I was like, okay, so we're seeing a patient. Let's say they want Botox. Are we talking to them about what they can be doing internally? Are we talking to them about how there's like how we're treating their cells and, what we're doing from the inside out is affecting their skin and affecting the dermis and epidermis and all the layers of the skin. So that's something that I've really just talked with the girls and like, educating myself and then how we can blend it into treatments. And it's definitely a work in progress. Like we're all learning, and we'll get into all the business things about owning a business and how, you create this idea and then it's evolving and you have to train and do all the things. But that's really where, like, to my core, where it all came from and why, I wanted to, because I really did see a gap in that. And I think so many people, when they start a business, they 100%. See those gaps and they're like, okay, run with it now. So that was my run with it. I really felt it was
impressive
cool.
Though. That's really freaking cool. Like I even have felt like I'm running around to different doctors lately, like just in general. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm over here for like my general doc because I had to go in the other day because I'm like cat's out of the bag. Everybody freaking knows. I've told everybody in their mom, but I'm getting a boob job. Hi everyone. And it's not going to be anything crazy. I promise you, hopefully won't be able to tell, but I'm somebody who's going to tell you. I'm not going to just like show up with tatas and you're like, what happened? I had to go to like a general doc for that. But then I went over here for my derm, and then I didn't really like what my derm had to say, to be honest. And my skin's still freaking out. And I'm over here at my naturopath, and I'm over here if I go aesthetics. So that's really cool that you have like a one-stop shop, and you guys can talk to each other. Yeah, because I think that's something you miss is like 100% doctors, nurses, whatever it is. They don't know the ins and outs of like what the person's being treated holistically or well all the way around. And sometimes the pieces, if you knew, would puzzle together so much and better, you'll find something out. For sure. And I always say this, like, I don't knock any type of medicine because I think there is totally time and place, Eastern, Western. Like everyone goes to like usually if you're going into medicine, you're doing it for the right reasons. You're doing it to help people. You want to, give people more resources. You want to teach them what you know. But ultimately at the end of the day, it's like due to HIPAA and things like that, they can't communicate. So like I can't communicate to your dermatologist without you giving consent and then sending you know what I mean? So it's just like within our clinic, we have that where we can, we sign a consent form and they basically say like, that gives us the opportunity to really discuss within our clinic. Obviously it's the same when you go out, but it allows us to really discuss care within everyone at the clinic. So wow. Okay. It's really helpful. Wow. It's just cool I don't know. These are things I'm not in the medical industry at all. So I'm like, I'm like things I'm thinking about and whatever, but I want to hear about your business and like owning a business because a ton of females have written in, called in, like asking questions about being a business owner or like, how do you start something that you're passionate about and like dive into your purpose? Yeah. So we're going to do a call Sid that we're going to listen to and then we'll dive into the questions. Perfect.
I would love to hear your advice on starting a new business. I think it's really cool how you started this business and podcast from a passion of yours, and you're really an inspiring entrepreneur. So I would love your take on, how you got it all started. What are the first steps for people that are just nervous to start something new? Don't know if they should, what resources to look into, all of that kind of thing would be super helpful.
Cute. That's but first of all, thank you, by the way, for calling in and saying that. That's such a compliment because a lot of the times we'll talk about other things about businesses and things that you don't know and don't see later, but you don't think people are watching really. Sometimes you do feel like you're on your own little island. So for someone to say like, I admire what you're doing is a big deal. Like when you said that to me, I'm like, what the heck? I say that to you because I'm admiring what you're doing, but I never stop and think about what I'm up to. For sure. So I'll let you go first because you're the guest. Oh my gosh. And it's such a loaded question. It's like, I know. And it's funny because I don't ever you're always in the business. You don't really take a step out all the time and talk about oh, how did you do this? I'm like, oh, that's a good question. So we should just go, where did you start? Or how did you know? Cause this is the whole episode. That question is encompassing everything we're going to talk about. So let's just say how the hell did you start this thing? I had this idea for a little bit. For as long as I can remember, I was always saying it was a little bit more specific. I was saying I want to open my sister's a PA in dermatology. Oh, cool. Out in California. So it didn't work to open it together, but we were always saying me and her, it'd be fun to open a business. Let's do a skincare clinic or whatever. And then as I finished NP school, I was talking to my fiance and we were driving home from Calgary where he's from.
And I remember telling Matt about it. And I was just like, I really want to do this. And he's like, well, why don't you? And I'm like, well, probably because it has a lot, it's a very just, it's
loaded, daunting.
Yes. It's daunting. There's risks, all the things. But then I took a step back and I was like, what really is holding me back? Like I've wanted to do this for as long as I could, or as long as I remember. And so it really was just like having the right people push me. I also had a really good friend, and mentor back in the day that worked a little bit in like business consulting. So she gave me a lot of her tools and resources.
That's
and
awesome.
I think one of the biggest things that she gave me this advice. Her name's Erica and she's wonderful. And she had told me, Erica had said, there's an answer for everything out there. You just have to go and find the answer. And that has stuck with me like whenever I've run this business. Cause there's so many things. It's like, what do you mean? Like I have to register my business. What does that mean? And it's like, well, go find out what it means. Like it's a willingness to do the things and find the right things. And I think that has gotten me through. Like, honestly, I replay that probably like once, if not once a week, once a month. And I'm just like, I just have to find the answer. You just have to be willing to find it. So really I had that, conversation with Matt. I was just put in, and sometimes I feel like it's like stars just have to align too.
Yeah.
Like I had this conversation right at the same time I was talking to my friend Erica and I was like, I'm going to do it, and then, it's finding a space and all the things that come in after it. So I won't get into that because I want to hear your answer too of like, like how did you get started? Like what were the steps of the beginning, initial steps for you? Cause it's different, honestly, I feel like for everybody.
It's totally different, but that's so cool. Like the timing is always like has something to do with it. Right. And
100%.
I'm going to remember that if there's always an answer, you just have to be willing to do the work to find the answer.
For sure.
Cause sometimes I'm tired and I don't want to do the work to find the answer. And then I feel bad because like bad for myself kind of, I'm like, oh, I don't know how to do this. This is hard. And it's like, no, you have so many tools at your fingertips. You're just having a bad day. Got to get out of your head.
And it's putting it into like, do you want to do it or do you not want to do it or do you not know how to do it? Cause I feel like that's two different categories. And I would ask myself that sometimes like, is that I don't know how, or I don't want to. And I think oftentimes they kind of fall into the don't want to, which
that's why you hire people. That's why you get help from friends. Yeah,
sure.
Exactly. I mean, I knew that I wanted to do something other than just my 9 to 5, especially the time I did not have a creative outlet. So for me, I was searching for a creative outlet. And I didn't know what that would be, but I went to school for journalism. Yeah. So I had practiced maybe being on camera at one point, and then I just kind of that fell off the train. I didn't see a trajectory for me after I shadowed at a news station in Minnesota that is really like an amazing news station. Yeah. And I can't even believe I'm saying this, but I got in there and I was like, this is it. Like, that's it. This is what I'm like shooting for the stars for. Like, hopefully I'll grind in a little small town and get here. And I didn't feel anything when I was there. I'm like, this doesn't make me feel anything. Like, well, I don't want this. And so that completely changed my trajectory. Got into advertising and journalism and all the things like strategy. And I'm like, you know what? How cool would it be to have a platform where you talk to people? The hard part is you can think and know you want to do something, but to be sure that people will listen or want to hear you is really tough and you won't know. So I just was like, okay, I'm not going to do this on my own. And we had a friend that had approached us about a podcast coming on it first. Okay. So I went on that. People were listening. It was really fun. I had a blast. And then he's like, you guys should do a podcast together. So that's when I got with my business partner and we were like, you know what? There's literally no risk in this for us besides just trying, maybe losing a little bit of money. Like it ended up being that COVID hit and we were like, you know what? Like we're just going to be sitting around. We have time. Might as well use our time for something. So we just started doing things that we thought people were interested in. And it was literally like a sit down. Like I'm not joking. You sit down and you say, what is my purpose? Like, what is my why? Like, what are other people doing that I really like or dislike?
For sure.
On a piece of paper. Pen to paper and just writing down purpose, your why, what makes you feel good. And then iterations off of that, like for us podcasts. So like we could talk about, let's say we were just going to be health. Well, then you're pigeonholed a little bit. You can only talk about these things, but I want to talk about that. Okay. So that you got to go back up. That's not going to work. How do we fix the umbrella? Then you do naming. So it was a lot before the start.
For sure.
Before the first episode, you didn't see any of the work that was happening for months and months and months of like space, the equipment, the help that you need. How do you even run a podcast? We need help, so there was a lot going on there. I knew that I wanted it to be more than a podcast at some point, which is kind of where we are sitting now. And I'll talk about it later, but it's like, it took a long time to get there.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was the trajectory.
Sure.
That was the start. I know, it's weird to think back about it, but I would love to know your why. You kind of talked about it a little bit, but I feel like the why is like okay, I want to start. This is the second step, is like knowing your why.
I have like two big whys, honestly. And I always come back to these two. And I always tell people too that ask, like, your why is what, when things start to go wrong, or like when you feel like things are starting to go wrong, or, you're not hitting your goals, or, it just gets busy or whatever, which anytime you start a new business, that's always going to happen in the first, 6 months to like probably 5 years of owning a business. If you know and you can come back to your whys and they're reasons that are true to you and true to yourself, like those will normally get you out of like the feelings of like, am I doing this? Is this okay? Is this going to succeed? And so I always bring myself back to these two things. And one was what we talked about. Like I really did want to help the community. I wanted to give more resources. I wanted to be able to treat patients in a way that I felt was really lacking. And, continuing to learn, the reason I went back for my DNP was there's so much research that goes into that. So I loved reading research studies. I loved reading about like what people were doing, which is like a little nerd in me, but I really like to like learn those things. So I was able to just see like, areas that I thought we could really improve within our healthcare system. And then number two was I wanted to give the staff that works for Be Your Kind an opportunity to succeed. Like
that's so cool.
I really, really felt like they're such a big part. Like you're not a team without your staff, without the people that are there every day showing up for for the clinic and for themselves and for their patients. And I just really genuinely felt like these girls deserve to be successful. Like if Be Your Kind successful, they should be successful. Like I see that in so many, places of work, and I feel like everyone can relate to that. They've been at a job or they know someone that's been at a job and they weren't happy.
Yes.
And I was like, how do I change the narrative? And it's, it's not going to affect everybody, but that part at least will affect like the people within the clinic, and then affect patients too, right? Like if you're giving a good place for your providers to work, like it's going to resonate to the patients, or it's going to, they'll be able to feel that as well too. So that was like
so cool.
The two big reasons. And I think a good reason why like majority of the people that I've hired at the beginning have stayed with us through, because I make sure they know that too, and as a leader and like someone in business, like you kind of have to make sure you're doing those things, and not just saying it, like they need to, they need to be compensated then accordingly. They need to feel like that. They need to feel like they're being heard. So it's like, and it's honestly a continuous, like we're doing, I'm learning and evolving every day, but I think, I would think most of them are hopefully at a good place where they're happy, which is like,
I'm sure they are.
I'm happy. Then,
I mean, you've got to be a good boss. There's no way you're not. Like you're too kind to not
I hope
be.
So. I'm like, if any of you are listening and you don't think so, come talk to me.
You better talk to her. No, I'm just kidding. There's no way that there's no way that Blair's a bad boss. I can just say that. Yeah. Finding your why though is like important because it keeps you going when shit gets hard. Yeah. Like starting a business is not easy. And we'll talk about the grind and advice that we have for everybody. But, if you don't have a why, you have nothing to go back to.
No.
And like, I've been caught in that, like in between switching from straight candid to well said, like I didn't really have a why. I was like, I'm just kind of doing it to keep doing it because I feel like I should. And that's very wrong. Like, and it's why I felt burnt out, purposeless, didn't know my direction, didn't know who to have on, didn't know what I was doing, didn't really like know what events to host. There was no why. Like you have to ground yourself in your why.
For sure.
Even if I'm talking to everybody right now, in your work, like figuring out what jobs you want to have, you have to know your why and like your number one priority.
For sure.
Because then you can figure out if you like the job or not, if it's worth it. Is the low pay worth it? If it's hitting your why for helping people, it maybe is because maybe you're not money motivated. Some people can work, I've said this before, the worst jobs like ever. Like they don't give a crap that they're not having fun at work. Because they're making a lot of money.
Yeah.
And that's also okay if that's your why. So you just have to understand what your why is to feel fulfilled. And I think a common denominator for us is that when I was working just in my 9 to 5, I was not working with my purpose or for my purpose.
Yeah.
And I was like, something's wrong here. Like, I feel like I'm wasting time. And I can't put my finger on the why. And then you start to figure out, okay, I really want to like talk to people and I don't want to feel, I don't want people to feel what I felt when I was confused or like when I wanted to learn more and I didn't have the resources to go to that doctor or go see that mindset coach or understand how to start a business.
For sure.
So really, I just wanted to be a resource for people. I love absorbing information and learning, and I wanted to give it back to everybody else.
Yeah.
That was my why. Was I doing that in healthcare, in paid media? No. Believe it or not, no. I wasn't doing any of that. So I knew when I ended, I closed my laptop at 5, 6, 7 p.m. at night, I was like, oh my God, I don't feel fulfilled.
It's not your why.
It's not my why. Yeah. So that's how I started figuring out what my why was and what that would be. And like, I would love to say that I also, part of my why is to make like $1 million. And obviously I want to make money, but I'm not driven by that. So that's actually been a hard thing for me because I don't like asking people for money. I don't like asking people to do things that are like benefit me because I have a hard time with like seeing that like I've done something really special. So I can do that.
You should. Yeah.
Sure. So there's all these things that come with a business that I think that I call it like I didn't sign up for this kind of things that you're like,
yes.
Oh my God, what the fuck is that? Like didn't want to do that. Yeah. But we'll talk about that in a second. But I just wanted to say, proud of you for branching off and doing something different. Cause I think that's so freaking cool. A question for you because you're not always living by your business. I'm just so curious of this. And then we'll talk about all the things of like what business is about and like, how do you actually like really physically start, but how do you manage it living far away sometimes during the year? That's crazy to me.
And it's honestly, it's such a good question. And I even ask myself, I'm like, how am I, and there's times where it's like, you're running on fumes, I'm traveling a lot and I'm very fortunate to be doing that. Like I'll say that right off the bat. But I do a lot of back and forth with it. I think knowing that though, I always knew that was going to be the case and I was going to be traveling. So I think the biggest thing number one was having that conversation with your partner, whoever you're with is like, it happened that my fiance was also in a period of his life where he was really trying to focus on his career too. So when you're with two people, like actually this was one thing that someone told me once too, I'm like quoting all these people. No, that's actually good. My sister, but
you should quote people. I quote people all the time because I learn from everybody else.
100%. And she said, you're most like the 5 people you surround yourself with. And I feel that true and true. Like when I'm surrounded by people, like in times of my life, I've been surrounded by people that I didn't really like align with. And I felt like I was taking on their tendencies. And it wasn't until I took a step back and I was like, it's not to blame them by any means. It's like, it happens for a reason or whatever. But with my fiance, like we're both at a period of our lives where we're very like driven. We're trying to, succeed for our different whys and, why we're doing things. So I think it was easier, having that conversation with him. It's like, he's also, was on the same, we were just on the same page with it. So I think having that conversation right off the bat and then, family, friends, willingness to help was huge.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
We have 4 dogs. So it's like, when I leave, it's not like I can just leave, we have like our cousins coming to town, watching our dogs or family members or whoever. It's really a team effort. And I think anytime you're starting a business, it's a team effort. And I really I do think about that, often is just like how grateful I am for my family and friends that really have stepped up. Cause if not, I wouldn't be where I am and be able to do it. Yeah. So I think communication, support from family and friends. And then with traveling, I think it's just being, finding the times that you can to make it work and, making sure your platform and your business is able to work remote too. Like it just happened that I was able to see patients virtually and I could do the business from afar. Sometimes it doesn't always work like that. So I was just fortunate that I was able to shift that. But I did look into that at the start too, because I knew that was the goal. So I think just like knowing your goals and your expectations too, like if I knew that I always had to be in person, I potentially would have waited to start this until it was a little bit better. But I was able to really look at that too, which was nice. So it's definitely a work in progress. I mean, sometimes it's harder, some days are harder or some months are harder where I am gone all the time and managing, long distance relationships with friends, family, all the things. But yeah, I feel like I'm at a good place now that I did it all last year and it's fine. You make it work.
You make it work.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like you're explaining like reasons instead of saying why not, you're finding reasons of how.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a part of like business and things. Like you can make every excuse in the book for why something's not going to work or why you can't do that. Or you know what, that's too complicated. That's too difficult. It's like, how much do you want it though?
Yeah. 100%.
How bad do you actually want it? Because there's always a way to do it.
Yeah. I was like,
there is.
And it will start to just sound like excuses, truly. Like,
kind
of even back to like when we talked about a little bit about like, when you go back to your whys, like there's going to be times in your business that it's going to feel like you're almost like, you really think about like, let's say, because money is just part of business, right? And you're having a month where you're really focused and you're like, are we making the money? And it's like, well, if that's not your why, like it's hard for it not to get like jaded and just like out of sight, like why your why is, And I think just like going back to that, honestly, it's like, I don't know, just coming back to that, like it can get really like shifted at so many points in the business and like knowing like really like is this why I'm doing it? Like, obviously you want to make, I don't know. So it's just like, I think that was like, it always just came back to that. And you'll find excuses if you're looking for them, right? Like 100%. If you're looking for excuses, you're going to obviously have them, but it's right. Like you said, it's like turning it into like, no, how do I get this done? Like, this is just a situation I'm in. It's a good situation to be in. Like, let's just get it done. So
yes. You have to know that you're going to hit a million walls.
Yeah. 100%.
And you're just going to have to figure it out. And 100%. It's like, you have to know that that's coming. And even like, if you're starting something on the side with like Etsy and you're creating something, like you're going to run into shit that's annoying. Like people that are sending complaints in customer service and all these things that you wear like 9 million hats. And that's just the obvious truth of having a business is it's a grind. And it's just kind of like when people want to get into social media, like I even was naive to think like, oh, I want to get into social media. How cool. It's a grind. Oh my God, it's a grind. And there's a million people giving you their opinions that you didn't ask for. And, you know, even if you're trying to do that, like, again, having your why, staying consistent, you have to know what you're doing. And also learning from those around you who are doing it well already. Like you are not there to rewrite the story and the way and the wheel. Like don't reinvent the wheel is my saying always that I use. It's not your job to reinvent the wheel. Like just freaking try to like do something and then, you know, test it and it doesn't work. You shuffle. That's what I do on the podcast.
100%.
Test a topic. Doesn't work. Shuffle. Test a topic. Doesn't work. Shuffle. And sometimes I'm like, you know what? No, this topic is going to work. And I don't give a crap if it doesn't reach the right people the first time.
For sure.
So then you're making a conscious decision to keep pushing in that direction. And that could be for social. That could be for a side hustle of any sort, really.
For sure.
Okay, so I'm backing us up just for a second. And I want to ask you, you went from pen to paper, like writing your ideas, finding your why, finding your purpose. Like, you know, you want to do something different. What happened after that? Yeah. After you talked to those amazing people, like at the perfect time.
Yeah. So first and foremost, you got to figure out how you're going to fund it. So that should be step number one, or around that. If it's not one, it should be two or three. And then really, I think the other big thing was I had brought this idea or like these concepts to someone that helps us with our finance, or like just a financial person, let's just call it. And I remember explaining this wonderful idea and all the things I wanted to do. And he was like, well, do you have a business plan? I was like, a business plan. That's probably smart. I should probably have a business plan.
That is so relatable too, because you're like, oh
yeah, that's probably a good idea. So I went back and created this business plan. And so I would say like number closely after, or it doesn't really matter what order they're in, because like you said, when you were starting the podcast, like all this stuff happens behind the scenes. But in saying that, you should still be like starting to like soft launch your business and gaining, momentum, but that doesn't necessarily, like there's so much that's going on behind the scenes. So created this business plan, and a business plan, like it's going to evolve, right? Cause when I started my business plan, I just revised it cause I needed it for something else just recently. And it was crazy to see like how much has changed. I was like, oh, I thought that I was going to do that and use that software and all the things, but really like a business plan you should be able to give that to someone and they should be able to essentially operate your business. And it's not going to start like that. It takes a while to get it to that point, but having that business plan now has been really helpful. And then just, there's little things that go into it too. Like you have to open your bank account and, register your business, and it's all of those LLC. Though, get your LLC. Yep. All those things though, like I remember they sounded so daunting, but if you just write them down in a step-by-step approach, like it's crazy how fast you can get some of this stuff done. Like, and then you create your emails, so they're linked to your business, and then you have to think about the branding and all that stuff. But it can get, when you think about it, it's like, oh my gosh, I want to, start a business. And you think about all the tasks. Of course, it's going to seem overwhelming because there is a lot to do, and I'm not sugarcoating that. But if you can break it down to like a step-by-step approach, it really seems less daunting than it really is. So I think 100%. That was like the main things. And obviously, we were looking for a space during all that. So all these things are kind of happening. And I talk about this a lot with my good friend Erica that I've talked about a lot because she was there from the start of this too. So and I will say too, having someone that can be, whether it's a soundboard or just someone that can give advice, like I would not have been able to do this business if I didn't have Erica. And
100%.
She like truly, truly was so helpful. So I'm not always, some people can operate without, solely on their own. Some people like to have a business partner. I don't think you necessarily need to have a business partner, but some sort of mentor, someone that you can just bounce ideas off of, like, hey, is this crazy or is this completely normal? At least when you're starting, and it really, like, it can come in so many different forms. And Anyway, so having her was really, really helpful. And then she just, from there, I mean, we were just, what I was going to say, sorry, I'm like back.
Oh, I don't care at all. I'm ADHD as hell. So I'm like, this is great. I'm like, no, I love it. I'm like, I follow everything you're saying, by the way. I always feel like I scattered myself too. No, but stories jump around. Who cares?
Always. No one cares.
I'm like,
it's like this in my brain all the time.
That's how the same way my brain is. Like, and honestly, probably every listener too. Yeah.
I'm like, it's the world we live in. But one thing we were saying, and actually this ties so well into like having ADD or like ADD, ADHD, whatever. But she was talking about with me, we were like, you're always going to be working on a bunch of projects, right? And there should be like one or two that are in the forefront of your brain, but that doesn't mean you stop like doing your payroll or doing all these other things, right? Like, and you want to make sure like the big things you're working on aren't like a million big things, because otherwise it's going to feel diluted and it's not, going to be successful. But so we were working on a million things all at once, but there was definitely like a few things we were really working on, like securing the space, making sure the renos were good. But then yes, we were like getting our emails set up and doing our like little, getting our brand, all the things. So it's just like figuring it all out and then just prioritizing it too. And just making it happen. Trusting yourself is big. There's probably so many good ideas out there of people that just don't do it because they're scared. And we'll talk, and we probably will get into this even more, but there's definitely something to be said about a risk, right? Like 100%. Taking a risk is huge, and you want to make sure you're taking calculated risks anytime you're in business, whether you're starting or, however many years in. But
is it a smart risk?
Yeah.
Like, is this a risk that I'm going to like F myself over? If it goes awry, do I have the time to even put in the work to be able to get it to where I want it to go?
For sure.
Was the SMART goal feasible?
Yeah.
And if you don't know what a SMART goal is, you're going to have to know that before you start doing anything, please, because it has to be measurable and it has to be attainable.
Yeah.
Anyway.
For sure. No, I mean, I echo everything. And yeah, calculated risks for sure. Like, you don't want to quit your job, that's making you sustainable income to put it all into a dream. It's like, well, you have to be realistic, right? And there'll be a lot of people, and you have to listen to the people that are telling you those things too. Cause I think there was times, when you're so committed to what you're doing, you're so committed to the ideas, like anytime anyone kind of I would get like this at first and I've become so much better, but someone would, people you talk to, their job is to poke holes in your business plan.
Oh yeah.
If they're trying to help you, they're only doing that to help you. And there was times where it almost was like a little ego, I was like, you're
a little hit to the ego.
Yeah. It's like a little hit to the ego. I was like, what? You don't like this? And that's like, no, you're literally just doing what a good consumer would do. They would poke, so you're helping me before it actually gets to that point. So yeah, surrounding yourself with good people, taking the tasks and just running with it, and then just not being scared as long as it's a calculated risk, I think, are just like really big things. It's such
how you start.
Yeah. I was going to say, and I was like, there's so many like more things in between that too, from like the pen to paper to it opening. But in a nutshell, I think those are like the really like main things that I would say.
Did you just pick a date to start it?
Yes. And it happened to be around, I feel so bad. Love you, Brie, my sister. It happened to be around the time that her baby was due middle of December.
Oh my God.
No, middle of November. Sorry. And it was supposed to be opened like end of October. And then, business things. It was never as planned. Things got delayed. And I remember we were opening like right around the time she was having her baby, which I ended up making it work. I was able to be at both things, but I was like, gosh, dang it. This is horrible timing. I was like, she's having her baby. I'm opening a business
But would there ever have been a good time?
No, honestly,
no,
never, there's never a good time, cause it's going to take so much of your energy and you're going to put so much into it. It's going to be so time consuming, but yeah, there's never a perfect time, but
no, you have to shoot sometimes. Yeah. You're like, love you, sister.
Yeah.
You have to shoot for like a goal at some point though. Like we just picked a date. Like I even picked a date to relaunch to in solo. It's like, you just pick a date and you work backwards and you go, okay, that means this, this, and this. Because if you don't pick a date, it will loom and it will like fester in your body and then you'll get like resistant to it and not want to do the things. So you just have to pick a day,
just go with it,
know what the list is and just go with it and roll with it. And you have to push that day back. You push the day back and everything is okay in the world again.
For sure.
I wanted to ask you a question because you brought it up, relationships with the business.
Yeah.
How the hell are you balancing an engagement? Because people ask me this all the time.
Yeah.
And amongst other things, amongst your sister, I work full time too, but my job is less strenuous. Like I'm talking about the podcast versus like your literal full business.
Yeah.
Like how do you manage relationships with all of that?
I think communication's huge. Like truly just there's so many times where like I've had to have those hard conversations with family and friends and just say like, I'm sorry, I'm not so as present right now. And honestly, good people in your life will understand. They really, really do. Like I cannot thank like my fiance, my parents, my sister, like my close friends, like they just get it. They know, they're all having babies. This is this truly is was my baby at that time. So, and you're putting so much into it and they get it. So I think just but if you're not communicating and telling them that, people don't know what they don't know. Right. So it could seem like, oh, she hasn't been very present. It's like, hey, I'm so sorry I haven't been very present. Like I'm working on a lot of these things. Like, and then, you can find time. It's just, and being intentional then with the time that you do find, like,
absolutely.
I think we've talked about this before is like, that does get a little bit hard when you are setting that time, or setting that time with those people that you want to be with. Like there's times then when I'm with them, with friends or family or whoever it is. And I can tell in my brain, like it's hard to put the business things and thoughts aside, but just being intentional, like reminding yourself, like I'm here with these people, like I want to be here, that stuff can wait. But yeah, I think communication is really, really big when you're juggling and mulling things.
Yeah.
And I mean, I bet I would assume you would echo the same thing. It's just, it's just communicating with people, and most people understand.
They have to understand. The good people will understand. And like if your people are needing something from you, like there's time and a place where you need to be there, and there's a time and a place when it's like it's actually really not on you, but you've maybe let it fall on you for a long time with relationships, friendships, family. Yeah. Where you're like, actually, no, you've like I'm not developing my things because I'm worried about you, and I actually don't think this is right anymore. Yeah. It's almost like a selfishness that you have to have. Yeah. But at the same time, you're being very selfless because you're working on your business.
For sure.
I mean, I wouldn't say struggling. That's like a very strong word right now, but like I have my full-time 9 to 5. Yeah. I do coach in the mornings on Wednesdays, and I can't just like show up to that and be like, what up, everybody?
Yeah, you have to plan.
I have to plan, a playlist and such. Not every time, but I try to. And then I have the podcast on, certain evenings, and thank God for the help that I have. Cause if I didn't have the help from Michaela and Zivka, which I'll talk about once we get towards the things you should know, I would not be able to have this moving whatsoever. Yeah. But then I'm planning a wedding. Yeah. And I also have a fiance who's extremely busy, and we love each other so deep, and we want to have time with each other, and we're both quality time people. Yeah. So we get very bothered when we don't have intentional time together. And something that we struggle with at times is when we finally get to slow down and be together. Yeah. We both slow down so much because we went full pedal to the metal, full throttle, that we're both like, I'm dead. Like this was supposed to be a night out on the town, or like a night out to fun dinner, and we like can't get off the couch. We're like, I'm so tired. I can't like do anything. And so we struggle with that a little bit right now, but it's just a season, and you have to recognize that it's a season, not like forever. Yeah. And that means that something's got to give. So for me, I'm like, I need to be scheduling my time better. I have to be way more intentional about time blocking in order to enjoy myself. Yeah. And like slow the F down.
For sure.
But it's like, it's a season. Yeah. Like we pushed our wedding out to October of next year. One, because that's the only date that venue had, and 2, because
such a blessing, probably.
I have time to save. I have time to work. I have time to like plan and not like rush the planning. Yeah. Like yours is next summer, right? Your
next
wedding?
Summer. Yeah. Yeah. And we had a long engagement too, because I was opening the business right around the time that we got engaged. I was like, no chance of doing that. I was like, I cannot do that. That's one thing. I was like, whoo. But yeah, now that we have a little bit more time, it's seeming like more manageable. But yeah, I mean, I would agree. Like it's just, and there's going to be I think summer's hard too. Like summer's just a busier month. So it's just like it ebbs and flows, but
you got to know that the ebb and flow is going to just happen.
100%.
It is what it is.
It's just life.
What advice would you have for somebody who's in like a work slump that's listening right now, that knows that like they're not working in their purpose, but they want to take a step in the right direction? They just don't know where or what to do.
Ooh, that is a good question. I would say, take the time to be in the slump almost, like not really like slump's not the best word, but take the time to like more reflect, and realize, or like think about like, well, why am I in this slump? Like what's causing it? Like, is it not, like we talked about it, are you not enjoying the pay? Is it you don't like the people you're with? Is it the concept of the job you're not liking? Is it the structure? Do you not like going to work? I think like really thinking about those things, and then that should in itself give you some sort of clarity of like what you want to do. Like, do I want to work at a job where I can work remote and I can travel, because I love traveling? Because I think that's another part too, is like, it can also be a little, like you talked about, it can be a little bit selfish. Like if you want to be traveling, like go but you also enjoy healthcare. It's like, well, maybe then think about doing travel nursing or, things like that. Like it can be for you too. Like your why doesn't always have to be for other people. It can be because you like to travel, or, it can also be because you like to make, like, those aren't wrong things. Right. Mm-hmm. But I think just like really putting in your head, like, or really thinking about like, why is it that I'm not enjoying what I'm doing? Like, why am I in this slump? I think reflecting in that in itself will really like get you a long way. And then just taking the necessary steps. It's hard to like think 100%. About it when it's such a specific, like, case by case scenario. So it's like, I wish I had an example of like someone that came to me for that and that I could talk to, and you might honestly have that. But I think that would be the big thing that I would say is like really reflect on what you are wanting from your job, because you spend, gosh, how many years of your lives, how many hours of our lives, like working on a day-to-day job. Like you should be enjoying what you do.
100%. So, I mean, and you just have to know that like, okay, I don't like what I'm doing. Can I realistically leave my job?
Yeah.
That's number one. Yeah. If the answer is no, it's like, well, then you know what? This is going to be the season of grind, baby. Yeah. And we're going to grind during the day and we're going to figure out what the hell we like after work. Mm-hmm. But I would say you can't dwell on the time that you're in, because the time that you're in is going to get you where you're going next.
Yep.
What do I mean by that? It's like, at first, I didn't even really know what I wanted to do. I just didn't know. I knew that wasn't serving me.
Yeah.
So I knew that I really liked being at the gym. And so I was like, well, I'm literally terrified of public speaking. So why don't I like try to be a trainer here, a coach here, trainer here, and see if I can get up in front of people and like talk to people and lead a group. That's a challenge. Okay. I'm just going to try it outside of my job, and let's see if this fills my cup. And it did. And it got me to be able to have confidence. And it's where I met the people that got me into my podcast. And because I started doing the fitness training, it got me my 9 to 5 in Lifetime.
Yeah.
And now I coach there.
Yeah.
And because of all this and the things that I've learned from my coworkers and the access to information, that's what shifted my podcast to be about health and wellness.
Yeah.
So if I had not been in that slump and figured out, wow, I could have an out here by, going into fitness, I wouldn't have found my purpose. It's not always linear. And I was just talking about this on my story the other day. It's like, it's a flow. Like it's not going to make sense all the time. It's not going to be a straight line. Like, I'm sorry, me thinking out of college, that was going to be my dream job. And then I was going to go right up to the CMO. Let's go. Well, I'm not a CMO. Sorry to burst that bubble, but like, it just doesn't work like that. Like 100%. It's not obvious.
Yeah.
So one little teensy interest at a time is going to get you where you want to go if it's not super uber clear to you right off the bat.
Low
if
and
that
slow.
Makes sense.
Honestly, I completely agree. I think, I mean, even thinking I worked nights for like 6 years before. And that when I think about when I was actually in a slump, it was when I was working nights. And it wasn't because I loved working in labor and delivery, but I was like, I was running on 3 hours of sleep, 4 hours of sleep. Like it was a grind. But again, like if you're not put in those situations, like I wouldn't have gone back to school and I wouldn't have been in the position that I'm in now. So it's just like, you really do have to think, and learn from the people you're around, right? Like nobody gets out of school usually. And if they do, I mean, good for them. It's probably 0.00. Yeah, I was going to say.
Or billion maybe even. Yeah.
But it's not linear. It's going to take time. And just, being, cognizant of the time that you're in and low and slow, baby.
And also just like, this is something for my younger self is like, don't resent or like get resentment towards people who have it in air quotes easier than you, because they probably don't, for one.
For sure.
Like I could not quit my job because where am I going to fall back on? Like, who's going to help me? Let's say if I can't make money to pay my rent, like the answer was no one. So that wasn't an option for me. Instead of just dwelling and being like, boo, in my room and sad and stuff. It's like, no, it was more reason for me to be able to hold myself up and like support myself. And I could do that with my job and I could start finding something that I like. Sure. But no growth comes from easy.
No.
Growth only comes from discomfort.
For sure.
And you have to be gritty. Like you can't just like sit on your butt and think that an opportunity is going to fall in your lap and someone's going to look for you and like it doesn't work like that. Yeah. Like you have to go seeking for it, which is actually kind of why I think we should talk about things that I wish I would have known before I started a business, and not in a bad way, because there's so many perks to a business. Yeah. There's so many perks. Like
there is.
We were talking about this before, fun events.
Yeah.
Perk.
Meeting people.
Schedule flexibility.
Yeah.
Generally speaking.
100%.
But you're working a lot.
Yeah.
But schedule flexibility.
I was gonna say that might be number one of things that you don't think about. Yeah. Is like you're gonna work a lot, and I think I was saying this to Sid before, is like we live in a time where there's no better time to own a business. Like we're given the capabilities. There's resources out there, like I talked about, but you do have to know going in, like, it's not as glamorous as it always seems. And maybe it can get to that point for sure. I mean, that's always everyone's goal is to, grow and scale and whatever, however that looks like for every business is different. But there's a lot of work that goes in to get to that point, right?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And I mean, I even see it in myself, like in times where I'm in my own personal slump or not working or as productive as I once was. Like you kind of see that, like hard work really does pay off. And it's such a cliche saying and term, but times in your life when you really are working hard, that's usually when the time, when things come to fruition and good things happen. And there's definitely a time and a place too when you are in those slumps. Like some of my best ideas have come from like when I'm not working as much and I'm really taking the time to like sit back and, like reflect on things and reflect on the business. But there's hard work in between those times too, for sure.
Absolutely. Do you know your human design chart, by the way? I'm a projector, but it's like basically it says you work in sprints and you like go hard AF and then you have to take like I'm dying, I need to take a nap, and then hard AF and then dying. And that's kind of how I am in my work too, because that's just how my brain works. I like hustle until like, oops, I hustled a little too hard. I need to take a break. But that's just like, that's how the business is too. I think something I didn't know is that you're going to have uncomfortable conversations. Yeah. Just as it goes, it's just a little weird. Like when you've got to talk to someone who didn't deliver something that you were really hoping would be better. Yep. We were talking about when you hire somebody online.
Yes.
And sometimes it's like, oh my God, I paid them money and they just delivered the ugliest brand logo I've ever seen in my whole life, but it's okay.
Yep.
Because that was just the money that I made this week from my 9 to 5. And now I don't know what I'm going to do. And I have to come up with another like source of money or ask a friend and be like, yo, I'll get you back later. But whatever that uncomfortable conversation is, you're probably going to have it. And 100%. It just is good practice for life because it happens.
Yep, for
sure. And by the way, I will go to the next one is like, you're not going to be able to do it all. Yeah. You got to hire out.
Yes.
Which is why like, for instance, I was talking about, Michaela is my friend who's also in like my social stuff because I need help. And, Zivka, she's my editor in Bulgaria and she's amazing. And without her, I have no idea what I would do. And she puts up with me too. Yeah. But I can't do it all. No. And I'm not going to do it all because then it would crash and burn.
Yeah. And those people are usually like, there's a reason you're delegate and there's a reason you're hiring that out. I think, I have a really dear friend that I work together in just so many settings, but she actually went, her name's Sonia. She works, she's actually a clinical psychologist, but cool. Yeah. So she's worked in a bunch of different, careers, and she actually started her own business and then went back to working for more of a established company and or established business. And so she has I talked to her so much because she has so many lessons and like, I wish I would have done that, or I wish I would have done this. And she's like, one of the best ways, I hope I like put this right. And if I don't, I'm like, I need to ask her how she put it again. But she said in Hollywood, right, they have the talent. So they have the actresses and, the big people that you think of. And
the faces,
the faces, right? And then they have the behind the scene people, the film crew, the, all the other things that are going, behind the scenes. And they would never ask the talent to do that job, right? Because that's their job, is to really focus on the high level, like acting and things like that. Yeah. And I don't consider myself in that anyway. That realm,
I get what you're saying though.
I was like, wow, it was like this light bulb moment. I was like, like if your job is to do like more of like the, whatever types of things, like why not then delegate out the tasks that you might not be as good at, or someone else could do a better job at, like if accounting's not your specialty and you have an accountant that will do a better job and make sure you're compliant and all the things. And, it makes sense to do those things within reason, right? Like you have to make sure you're budgeting and can afford those things. There's a reason why businesses don't grow overnight, but I feel like you do have to delegate when delegation is due, I guess.
Oh, absolutely.
But yeah, I know she said that to me and I was like, oh, that's it's a different way to put it. And it's definitely a different realm. And that's such a,
it clicked for me though. I was like, oh shit, you're right. Yeah. I don't have to be doing everything. Yeah. Oopsies. I'm trying to be better at that. Yeah. It takes a lot of practice though. And hard. It's also like the releasing the reins of like, this is my thing and I'm going to claw it until like the day I die. And you just have to like, whoops, that didn't go as great. Yeah. Whoops, whatever. But you got to keep it tight. You just have to be okay with like, for sure, that wasn't how I would totally do it, but it's close enough, whatever.
Live and learn.
Something you learn right off the bat too, and we'll jump into advice on what to do to start all of these things and like what you need. But just want to hit on a few more of these. Is like you'll probably work when everyone else isn't.
Yeah.
And that's just the harsh reality of it as you start to get it on its feet. Like you're working when people aren't. And I've found that lately I've not been wanting to do that as much, especially summer too. And I've just been busy and it starts to fall a little bit. Yeah. Like if you don't have time blocked for it when you need to be, it will like start to like kind of teeter and you have to be like, shit.
Yeah.
Okay. So I just have to set time aside, but you have to be willing to schedule yourself, do things that you don't really want to do, pay for things that literally suck all your money away at times. And it is what it is, but you have to believe in where you're going and your why.
For sure.
And that's how I was able to pay for things when I'm like, shit.
100%. And just trust that every business is so different. And obviously like just hoping, there should be some return on the things that you are investing in. And then, but there definitely, there has to be, thought behind it, but there also does have to be some trust behind it too. And knowing like, your business more than anyone else. So you can tell, if you're making a big investment in your business or you're hiring someone that could cost you a little bit more and you're explaining it to a mentor or someone and justifying what you're doing, it's like, of course you take what they have to say because there's a reason you're on that call or you're talking to that person. But at the end of the day, your business and you've been in it every day. No one's going to care about your business as much as you do. Like truly nobody. I think it's just, trusting yourself. And then the other point too I was going to make is there's times I feel like, and I know you're going to test it, or like, I guess I don't know, but I would assume you're going to say this, feel the same. But there's going to be times where it does feel isolating. Like starting in business, like there's definitely people out there that do it, but it's not like everyone, not a lot of people always understand, or you feel like they don't understand, right? Or so just like finding a couple people that have, like for me, like even having you to like chat with you and like the times that we've had, like just knowing someone that's like gone through it is just can be really helpful too. And I don't know. I mean, it can be isolating, but it's like just surrounding yourself with like the right people too can be very helpful. But 100%. I don't know. There's just times where you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know who to go for to go to this for or whatever. But
you just get in your little bubble and it can be like, self-isolating and you're like, oh, God dang it. Like I'm doing this all by myself. Like, why am I doing this all by myself? And you have people that work for you, but you're like, I hired out for people that I would say that have different strengths than I do. I mean, one of them has like, they're both genius, but like they have different strengths. Like they're so good at social, they're so good at editing, they're so good at these things. And I'm supposed to, I come up with different ideas and I bounce things off of them, but I can't distract them from what I'm having them do. So I'm like, shit, I gotta be on my lonesome, and it can be lonely. Like
for sure.
It is like, sometimes when people come up to me and they're like, I got recognized on the plane the other day and in LA, which was wild.
Oh my gosh, crazy.
Yeah. And I was like, holy shit. And you're like, oh my God, people are out there listening. Yeah. Like they actually do.
It's one of those moments that you're like,
today
it's worth it,
when I was at my old gym, I stopped by there just cause I just sometimes I go there and I'm like, you know what? I want to get an old workout and be kind of in my own little zone.
Yeah.
And, this girl who I used to come to my classes and I used to work out with her there. And she was like, dude, I love the shift of the podcast. Like, I love it. You're doing it. And I'm like, I would have never in a million years would have been like, oh, you're listening over there. Like, it's just like cool. You're like, oh my God. Like, I didn't know people actually cared.
100%.
You forget people care.
Yeah. Yes.
When people come in, you're like, oh my God, I went to Be Your Kind and like, whatever. And I saw so-and-so and you're like, oh my God, cool.
Right. I know.
And you're like, oh, why am I surprised? Like, like why I should be like, yeah, I know.
Yeah. No,
like,
every time though I'm surprised. Like, I mean, and we're so new and everything, but it's just, it does feel good to like have those moments where it's like, oh my gosh, like that's nice that people are listening or people are like supporting. And I think we talked about this a little bit, like support can come in so many different sizes too, whether it's listening, whether it's just, following along and engaging or asking about support can be, it really can come in so many different shapes and sizes. So,
oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, it's fun to see those little moments.
Okay, so we shared of all the things that you got to know. You should know these things when you're doing it. Like, and it sounds so negative, but it's all a part of the process. All that we're asking is that you're aware that those are like things that maybe you'll have to deal with or maybe that will happen.
Yeah.
So let's give you advice on what to do and what you need.
Yes.
How does that sound? Cool. I would say, I would have been so freaking mad at myself if I hadn't tried, so just try. Like, even if you fail, I think failing is such a lesson of like, that didn't like align with my wants and needs. And so like that kind of failed, but it's not a failure. Like failure is used as such a negative derogatory term. When in my mind, it just redirected me. It didn't mean everything stopped and I didn't learn anything and I didn't meet anybody and I didn't, get any new insights. It just meant I went, whoa, that I got to like divot, turn, and I went a completely different direction because I was in my mind failing in a certain area. And guess what? I knew it all along in my gut. It wasn't aligning with who I was. It wasn't feeling good for a long time. A lot of it was, but some of it wasn't sitting well with me. Yeah. My body was physically telling me that it wasn't working for me.
For sure.
And then I wasn't able to continue that because it just didn't work. Like you will fail and shift and turn, but like I will say, you just got to frickin' start, because I would have looked back, 3 years from now, had I not started it, and I would have just still been in my same swirl. This has given me so many new opportunities to meet people, to give access to information to people, for me to learn, for me to get new information.
Yeah.
Like that, I wouldn't trade that for anything.
100%.
So I would say just start and know that, you don't need to be the biggest, baddest, like hugest thing in the world to be successful. Like there's different scales of success. And, I don't sit here and I'm like, I want to be the biggest podcast in the world. Like I actually don't think I want to.
Yeah.
Because I have other things. Yeah.
Right?
Like I've seen what it comes with just from like a small, medium size. Yeah. Like the biggest, fuck no, I would not want that. But I'm so successful and I have to give and take. Like if I would have given my whole life to that, I would have probably been able to become bigger faster, but I like my life and I like the things that I'm doing and I like my 9 to 5.
Yeah.
So I'm not willing to do that. So you have to kind of, how do I say this? Like balance what you want and what success looks like.
For sure. I do definitely think I echo what you say of like defining, success too. Cause it really can, like, so many different people view success in so many different ways. Like, is this success for your company helping more people? Is it reaching more people? Is it making money? Is it, expanding? Is it growing? Is it franchise? Like whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And just like you said, like going off of it, like if it does fail, like there were so many times, cause that is always at the beginning going to be in the back of your mind. Right. Or yes, maybe not always, but a lot of the time, right?
Is. Like you're always self-doubting on accident. Yeah.
Right. And then I feel like one thing that someone told me was, it could even like the one worst thing that can happen. It's like always have that, like you can think about the worst things that can happen, but like, what about the best things, right? Like what if it does, take off? What if you do help a lot of people? What if you do, get the word out and you're able to reach a lot of people with, different health advice or whatever it might be. So I don't know. I think really just like genuinely like trusting yourself and not being scared of, as long as it's a risk that isn't going to come with severe consequences where you're not going to have money to pay your bills. And there might be time where, you might have to work 2 jobs at once and you might be in that period of grind because you can't just quit your job and start a business. So just making sure, you're thinking about those things, of course. But at the end of the day, a lot of times, like if you're really thinking about it and you put the effort in towards doing what you're doing and starting the business, like what's the worst that can happen? So always,
not that much.
Yeah.
I mean, really.
For sure. Yeah. As long as, I was going to say, as long as you're not.
Don't burn all your money away and then you can't pay for your food and your bills. Like that's like my one thing. Yeah. But like other than that, it's like, well, it should be good.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, and don't put your like relationships at jeopardy. Yes. I would say if they're important to you.
Yeah.
Like if I don't know, it's going to upset your significant other. That's going to be a long conversation. Like, I mean, Jordan and I, when I first started, like topics, there were things about us that were off limits in topics because he's like, that's upsetting to me. And I'm not okay with my network knowing those things. And I was like, okay, that's completely fair.
For sure.
And so I knew in my gut, I didn't have to question, like, when was he going to not like something? Yeah. I knew as long as I stayed off of those topics, all was well in the world.
Yeah.
So having those conversations, communication.
Yes.
I wrote down, use your resources, ask for help, and find a mentor. Like use your resources around you. Like when I don't know something, find the answer. When I ask a friend, ask if they'll help you as a sounding board.
Yep.
Ask for help. Like don't just sit there and, and wallow in misery, because I did that sometimes and still do that. I catch myself and Jordan's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know how to get an LLC or I don't know how to whatever. And he's like, just Google it, or like, I'll help you, Jesus. Like, like whatever, ask for help. But it's, you need to do those things. And then finding mentors, there's many. And one of my mentors, Callan, who's been on here before, she's in AI, completely different area, but she is so smart with businesses and like makes more decisions like faster than I can even like blink, you know, and I need someone that's going to push me out of my comfort zone and ask me uncomfortable questions. And so she's one of my mentors. Like I have mentors all over the place. I have mentors in my 9 to 5, and they're all going to bring you different mindsets, skills, perspectives, but they're going to help you see a bigger picture that maybe you can't see. And they know things that maybe you don't have to waste your time failing at,
for sure,
and just can learn from their mistakes or their learnings.
I know. I do feel like that with like research, like just if you surround yourself with people, I mean, there's so many resources out there. And I feel like there was times when I felt like that too. You just feel so alone. You're like, oh, I don't know who to turn to for that. And like, I've now gotten better about being, using the resources I do have and taking their advice, right? Like, I feel like sometimes too, you can be on those calls and it's like, you have to be present during those. You have to be like really listening and, you know, absorbing what they're saying and then making sure it's relevant to your business. Cause like I talked about before, they don't know your business like you do, but a lot of the stuff that they can say, even if they're high up in another business, or maybe they just have really good advice for your business or whatever you're meeting them for, usually it can relate back to your business if you just find the tips or the tidbits that, you know, you can bring back. So
totally.
I think just really like being open to those conversations too. There's so many people willing to help, like truly.
And they will give advice. And sometimes you're like, damn it, I did not want to hear that. Yeah. That really was not good. Or like you knew it already and you hear it and you're like, they're like, that's just not working. Or like, you're not being your true self, or, you know, that's broken and that's messy, or like, and you're like, fuck.
I think too, actually just like going off of that and like, as for advice for a business too, and just, I don't know what made me think of this, but staying true to your brand. Like, I think that is 101 is there's times where we'll get clients in or things that I don't feel good about. Right. Or I'm like, that doesn't really represent, or like what they want. Like, that's not good for them. Like, I don't want to just do that because it's not good for them, or it's not safe, or there's something better that they could be doing, or they're just not a good, you know, client for us, or whatever it is. Or like marketing that goes, you know, whatever, it could be in so many different things, but if it's not representing your brand, and I've gotten myself into that a little bit too, because I wasn't always doing the best job of telling our staff of like what our brand actually is and what I want that brand to look like, because they don't know what they don't know, right? So like there was times where, you know, I really wanted this all-encompassing Eastern Western medicine blend where we're doing preventative and treatment care, and you know, the consultations should reflect that and how we're speaking to patients, but how do they know that if I'm not telling, you know, like explaining what the brand really is, like to a T? Like, obviously, you know, they can read and stuff, and that's just knowing your, you know, your people too, and knowing how they learn. So I think just like staying really, really true to your brand, and knowing that if you're talking about it every single day and really, you know, getting through to the people that you're with, like, this is what we want to represent, like, they then don't have an excuse and they should know the brand. But
that's a good point though.
Yeah. I don't know. I just think there's so many
knowing
times
your brand,
like in the business, and it can get like, you know, it can change, like, or feel like it's changing, but it really shouldn't. Like, as long as you know deep down why you start, and it most likely won't change, right? Like, that's your why, right? Like, that's the why of the brand. So yeah, I think just like knowing that, and
I love that.
Going back to that is good to know. But
I love that. Cause I mean, for a while there, I didn't even know my brand, and like didn't know how to narrow because I didn't know what I wanted. And I had to literally have like a meltdown, which you guys heard, like a few episodes ago, and just like be like, oh my God, what am I doing? And I needed more narrowing. Like I went too wide and I wanted to come back in, and like what's true to my core, excuse me, I have the hiccups cause we're drinking these like bubbly, what are these called? Culture Pop sodas. Decent. I like it.
Yeah. I like
it's good.
It.
I just have the hiccups.
Ginger.
So ginger lemon, something like that.
Love it.
Not an ad, by the way. Just sipping on them. But yeah, like just coming back to narrowing and having a why and doing it. And just for the love of God, just frickin' start.
Yeah.
Just start, my people. Like, just get off your ass and do it. And like, put, schedule a little time, even if it's an hour a day and if you're like really like Jesus, but I don't know even where to start at all.
Yeah.
Journal.
Yeah.
Journal. You know what I used to make lists of is like, I would make lists of things that I thought I wanted to do that I saw other people being successful in. Yeah. And then so let's just give an example. Like, dermatology. I'm like, well, I'm not going to go back to school. So cut that one out of there. You know what I mean? It's just out. What I'm trying to think of, like things I was thinking about making. Let's just pretend it was jewelry, like jewelry and earrings. I'm like, I don't know how. I don't have any of the resources. I would have to learn a whole new skill. And I actually don't think I really have like the eye for it. Okay, cool. Cut that one. Interior design. Love doing it in my house. When I see before and after pics of houses, I'm like, what? Mine, blown. I don't think I have the eye for that.
I don't know. I've seen your house. I'm like, I came in, I was like, whoa,
oh
this
my
is
God,
nice.
thank you. But it started at a pretty good spot. Let me just put it that way. So like, I'm like, nope, not into interior design. Like, so then you start to be like, okay, I'm way too wide. Like, let me narrow in a little bit.
For sure.
And then you start to narrow and all of a sudden there's like, 20 things. And you're like, wow, 5 of these I could actually maybe see myself doing.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not a thing. It might be a service.
Yeah.
It might be a skill that you have to share.
For sure.
It might just be like training or like doing something like that. Like it doesn't have to be elaborate. We're on social. Social is a liar. It's like it makes everything look glamorous.
100%.
I will tell you, I've talked to people who are like high up on social media too, who are like influencers and different things like that. And granted, they do have a lot of perks. They get a lot of free shit. Like I would love that, like free clothes and free events. Great. But they're constantly thinking about what is the next piece of content. Don't become irrelevant. Like we got to get going. We got to keep doing shit. We've got to keep hustling. Like a lot of them aren't like the happiest people I've ever met in my whole life. And they got like famous. There's like a famous TikTok that's out there right now. And it was like, it's a voiceover and it's like, what happened when you went viral? And they're like, absolutely nothing. It's like, it doesn't just like fill your cup and then it's done and you're winning.
100%.
It's a lot of work.
It's a hamster wheel of you're just always thinking, what's next.
Yeah.
And
so that's like, that was a long spiel for me, but that's just what I got to leave you with.
I love it.
I'm like, I'm spieling right now. I got caught on my spiel. I wasn't going to do it. We were debating before this, but I have a write-in advice for long distance relationships. And I was like, you and your fiance are sometimes at points long distance for periods of time. I used to be long distance with a significant other. So I'm just going to read it because you know what? Why not? Why not have a little dating advice in an episode?
I love it.
Long distance special friend, boyfriend, ? One of my good friends is in medical school in California and I went to visit her. Long story short, I ended up fancying her good friend. We have been intimate and I have made several trips back out to visit them. And now it has turned into visiting him alone. I know, so not for the girls, but I still see her and I value putting effort into seeing where this relationship would go with this guy. We share mutual strong feelings for each other and things have been really going well. We had a more serious chat one of the first times I visited, and he said it would be unusual if he introduced me as his girlfriend to his family if we've only spent about a week together in person. I can see how this is valid. However, it does make me sad because I know our feelings for each other are strong, but I'm stuck on what to bring up. Should I be upset at him for not prioritizing a label? We have been chatting for 5 months, so maybe I am moving too fast and I'm way too in my head. I see both sides, but would like your takes on it as well. I look forward to your podcast every week. Thanks, Sid.
Aw.
That's cute. I love when people do that. I'm like, oh, happy tear.
Little tear.
That one is difficult for me
I was
because
gonna say, I'm like, I need a moment. I don't know.
I didn't read this before. Some of them I don't read before in full because I wanted like actual organic reaction.
Yeah, I know.
And I didn't realize, I was thinking it was long distance, like had already been together and moved away. But we're looking at this from like meeting on a trip, basically.
Yeah. But they've been talking for 5 months. Right?
Yeah. That's a long time to be talking.
That's a long time. Is it over over FaceTime? Like, or I don't know.
I wish I could ask a question of like what kind of talking,
right?
I
think it's hard because when you're growing a relationship over long distance, I feel like that's different than like you're in a relationship and then are long distance, right? Like I feel like just because in those beginning months, like there's so much, at least like depending on, some people really do view like physical touch and like, one-on-one time, like in person as like, that's what they need. I feel like in beginning relationships, sometimes like it is what they need. But if you're talking every day, I think it's just ultimately at the end of the day, like how communication is, like how are they communicating? Like, have they had those conversations? But I don't know.
I have a few thoughts.
Yeah. I want to hear them.
Like in my head, I'm like, okay, it sounds like a lot of like, why nots again? Remember we talked about this for business?
Yeah.
Like if you wanted to make it work, like, have you gone out there on a trip solo with him?
Yeah.
Like, has he made that a priority to be like, I know you always come out here for your friend, like, but maybe you come out here and we do it together. Like we do a trip with each other and it's more like you're visiting me and then you get to see your friend.
Yeah.
Like it shouldn't just coincidentally be like, a very nice coincidental hookup every time you go out there to visit your friend. And it's very easy for him because he doesn't have to do anything. He's just there.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, it's a communication, like you're saying, but it's like a show of effort. So if you're saying why not, there's a lot of reasons like he's making it like, why not? I'm not going to introduce you because we've only spent a week together. Well, why don't you make an effort to hang out more?
Yeah.
Like to do a specific trip to California for you guys to hang out.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a friend who met her boyfriend who they're now like very serious on a trip to go visit her friend in Arizona.
Okay.
And they're exclusive. It went exclusive first and they were like, holy shit, this is like really good. Like we like this a lot. She prioritized going out there. He prioritized coming to her. And now what do you know? They're dating and they have just most recently made a plan that they won't be long distance forever and she'll eventually move in the next year.
Oh, I just got chills.
I know. And it's so like, 10 out of 10. But if it seems convenient for him, if I'm being totally honest,
100%.
Like, and he might be saying that he really has feelings for you and, you know, you're chatting for 5 months and it might be a good conversation, but is he showing it is really my question.
I feel like you need to make sure he's putting in the effort too. Like, you know what I mean? Cause I
don't know. I'm not saying don't pursue it. Cause like it still could be, there still could be something here. Yeah. I just like, get his ass out to you. What about the other way? Like,
make you a priority. I mean, that there's no better way to tell, like, is this something that I want to do or he wants to do than really like bringing it to head. And I don't think they're too early on to like have those conversations, right?
5 months is a long time.
I was going to say it's different if it was a month in, but 5 months in, it's like, okay, let's see what the priorities are. Like, do you want, and it doesn't have to be a super hard conversation. It's like, you know, if you guys are already like chatting organically and talking about those things, like it's just, you know, having that conversation of like, hey, how about me coming out there and we just spending a weekend together and seeing if that's something we want to do. And then I think that in itself will give you all the clear direction that really is needed.
I was just trying to see if I had anything else in here that I was like, ooh, let me look at that again. You have mutual strong feelings for each other. I just think he's not showing it. And you're like caring enough to ask me and you know what I mean? And like caring enough to probably go out there a little more frequently now to see your friend than maybe you originally would. And I just think that, you know, I'd be curious if he's more recently out of a relationship too, because sometimes I feel like people will keep like, I mean this in the kindest way, and I'm not implying it. I'm just saying it happens. Yeah. Like a crutch relationship, like someone who they can talk to always. That's kind of always there as comfort and support, but it doesn't really go anywhere. Yeah. That would be something I would be fearful of in this situation. So
and you just got to protect yourself. Like you never know.
Yeah, right? You never know.
You just want to make sure you're.
Yeah. I'm for the girls, and you don't want to be.
You don't want to be like
my gals to be good.
Yeah, and you want to be a year in, and then you're still having these like conversations. Like I feel like this is a now conversation versus like
later. No change, then it's
now I want to know. I'm like, please write back in and tell me. Like,
I know. Tell me, will you call back in and tell me what happened or text me?
I was like, I need to know.
I'm like, I want to know. And if you're like, I didn't have a chance to ask my advice and I want to ask my advice, I prefer calls. I will always take write-ins, but I just prefer calls because it's easier for me. 612-470-7569. In my bio, there's also a link to write in and type in. So if you're like, where are people typing this in? You can also text my number, but I won't see it as fast because I can barely text people back on my phone, let alone like texts coming in from people for advice. So I love you, but I'd prefer you to call me if you can, because I love you. Duh. Blair, this was so fun.
Thank
you.
Like
truly so much fun.
I was telling Sid before this, I was like, this is like 101 biggest fear. I'm not big in talking in front of people, but
you did phenomenal.
Don't
even worry about that.
Thank you.
And they can come find you at Be Your Kind if they're located in Minnesota.
Yeah, Be Your Kind.
Where will you give your handles and like all the things?
Yeah, it's just Be Your Kind _. So that's where you can find us. Otherwise, you can type it in on Instagram. We will hopefully be the first ones to come up. So
you will. And where can they find your personal social?
I'm just Blair Blanchette. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. And then if they wanted to come in, what are they probably coming in for? Like, can you name off all the things that you guys do again?
Yeah. So any aesthetic treatment we do, injections, filler, microneedling, all those fun things. There's a whole aesthetic department, but we also do naturopathic medicine. I do some regular general consult, weight loss, skincare, acupuncture, women's health, all the things, one-stop shop.
And fertility.
Yep.
I actually might have that person on my podcast, which I'm hopeful she'll say yes.
She is amazing. I have learned so much. And
I would
she's had
love
some
to have
really,
her on.
really,
You'll have to connect
she's amazing.
us.
I will for sure.
Okay.
She's great.
Thank you everybody for listening, for being on this journey. We're like ramping back up into the topics that we really care about. And I care about business and I wanted to share these things with you. And I'm so lucky that you were here. Thank you for being here. Yeah. Crew, peace and blessings. I love you. I'll talk to you next week and call in if you need anything. Bye.